I had to rearrange the schedule a little bit to make a day available for you guys to take that electronics test.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
When are you taking it?
February 5th.
So about those two emails, the ones that I gotta sign with Gail, can I just go up there and sign them?
Yes,
Mhm.
you can. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna do that.
And then also the other one, what was the other one?
There's a survey.
Survey?
You
Can I
can do
take
that one
that
with her too.
also? Okay.
Reason for it.
I don't like doing stuff on the internet with my phone. I got AT&T and my phone never works. I'll be in my living room, it doesn't work without Wi-Fi. That's why I hate using my phone.
Yes, Gail has physical copies of all of those.
What are they for?
One is for special populations. So you all have a chance to identify yourself as a special population if you choose. And one is for, like saying that you have a copy of the handbook and back to class acknowledgements.
My photo reviews. I don't want to do photo reviews.
Yes, photo release. You can select no on the photo release.
They're all mandatory.
I mean, I don't think that they can make you do them, but they're gonna keep sending me emails with your name to bug you. You don't.
That's fantastic.
Hey, how do you spell analyze?
ANALYZE.
Well, there's a misspell in the book, I think.
Is
Is that
it
extra credit points?
so? Is it a misspelling or is it
You're just
Analyze.
not reading it right. That's,
analyst?
isn't that?
No, analyze like fast tense.
Analyzed
Analyze.
with an S?
Yes.
Isn't that book all from
No,
an English
no.
writer or like UK writer?
The black and yellow one, yeah, was translated. I don't know. Yeah, you can send it to me, Kyle. I'll take a look. Did you raise your hand, Sam?
Oh, it's the second bullet point, it says.
Yeah, I did.
Development of human factors database including analyzed cases, good practices, related literature.
It might be the British spelling. There's several instances in that book where they use the British spelling of stuff.
So am I not giving extra credit?
Well, it's not an error.
Oh.
It's just not American. Kind of like SI and English units, like there's slight differences. All
I
right,
think we should give you the benefit of the doubt.
we're gonna talk about some error likely situations and some error prevention tools. We're gonna pull up briefly a vocab sheet, and then we're going to watch a somewhat long, an almost 20-minute long video that is going to describe for us a accident. And it is one of the major reasons I don't ride roller coasters. And then we're gonna break up into some smaller groups. You guys can kind of put yourself in teams of 3 or 4. And there's some questions on the assignment on Moodle that I want you to answer. I want you guys to take some time and go through the lecture materials and the posted resources and determine what errors had happened, determine what tools could have been used, and then kind of talk about what you guys would have done differently. And then once you've kind of written down those thoughts, we'll come back, we'll discuss it as a group, and that will be class. Okay. Error likely situations is a work situation in which there is a greater chance for an error when performing a specific action or task in the presence of error precursors. We talked about error precursors. Who remembers what the definition of those were?
That's just something that could have caused an error before an error happened.
Yes. Did you raise your hand, Jennifer?
Oh, yeah. Unfavorable condition.
Yes. So Your definition is correct. Jennifer's is the technical correction. The simple presence of unfavorable conditions cannot be error likely unless a specific action is to occur within those conditions. So just because sometimes we have bad conditions, a great example might be adverse weather. Just because there's ice on the road does not make it error likely unless you're going to also drive on the icy road, right? So one of the things I have noticed when we go to analyze these accidents we're going to over the course of the semester, sometimes looking at the error likely situation, the answer gets too broad. It has to be the conditions in which an action is taking place. So make sure you guys are keeping that in mind. Great thing about error likely situations is that they are predictable, manageable, and preventable. So unlike human error, which occurs and we can't completely prevent it, we can remove error likely situations and decrease our chance of making an error. This is another definition. We're getting a little bit more specific when we're talking about being at work. Okay, unfavorable conditions embedded in the job site that create a mismatch between a task and the individual. Some conditions that might make Cattell make an error may not affect Kyle. Some conditions that would make Marcus make an error may not affect Caden, right? So there's a mismatch between the task and that individual because of conditions at the job site. So, you know, a great example is a person with dyscalculia. If they have to write down the number that's spoken to them on a radio, they might be in a very error likely situation because they're having to write a number and they reverse numbers because of having dyscalculia. Whereas a person who doesn't have that may have a need for glasses. And if their glasses are fogged and they're trying to read a number that's written to read over the radio, they may struggle there. Whereas if it had been read orally to them, they wouldn't, right? So there's a mismatch between the task and that individual. And then simply stated, Caden's definition, conditions that provoke an error. There's 4 categories that we're going to talk about. Capabilities are unique mental, physical, and emotional characteristics of a particular person that fail to match the demands of a specific task, right? So we just talked about dyscalculia, unfamiliarity with the task, an unsafe attitude, inappropriate training or level of education, inexperience, poor health and fitness. If you are someone who does not like to be hot and sweaty, and you have to go spend several hours in radiological PPE in a heat exchanger room, you're going to be uncomfortable. It affects your ability to focus unless you know that about yourself and know that you need to step back and take breaks and cool off and refocus, right? Capabilities are going to be something that largely you are responsible for identifying that you have the capability to do a specific task. Task demands. These are the specific mental, physical, and team requirements to perform an activity that may either exceed the capabilities or challenge the limitations of the individual. Okay, so how difficult or complex the task is. I remember there was an operator who had fairly severe issues with hyperactivity, and he was not good at focusing at mundane tasks over long periods of time. And for whatever reason, this person had been assigned for like the whole quarter to do this particular test on this instrument because they wanted the same person repeating it over and over, where he had to literally push one button, sit and watch the timer for 3 minutes, and then push another button and record the results. Then they had to do that 10 times to get this calibration data on this machine that was not working the way they wanted it to. They were trying to record at different times a day with different other conditions. And I don't think once at exactly 3 minutes he managed to push the buttons. It was just a really hard task for this person. And so instead of finding some way to deal with his challenge for the task or communicate to his team that he needed a peer check or someone to switch him tasks, they got bad data for weeks until someone came and started doing it with him, and they would time each other, and that fixed it. But looking at what is being asked of you and what you need to do to remove the errors that you're going to fall into in that task, very important. Giving feedback when the task is written poorly and is going to create additional errors, also very important. Human nature. So this is the generic traits and disposition and limitations that incline individuals to err under unfavorable conditions. So stress, complacency, inaccurate risk perception, your mindset, taking mental shortcuts, not being disciplined in applying short-term memory. And then the work environment. The general influence of the workplace, the organizational and cultural conditions that affect individual behavior, such as a work culture that tolerates distractions, that has awkward equipment layouts or complex procedures. They have at-risk values and normal operational standards. The work group attitude, maybe your company's culture is really good, but you end up in the one work group that doesn't have very good risk assessment. How well the work control processes are written, and then temperature, lighting, noise, weather to a certain extent when you have to be in an outdoor environment. These are the things that largely you do not control, where the other three, you as an individual have a lot more responsibility for. By definition, error precursors exist before an error occurs. So if they're discovered and removed, your job conditions can be changed to minimize your chance for error, right? This really only works if the people in a workplace possess an intolerance for error precursors or error traps. In the video that we're going to watch, I'll let you guys make your own decision, but I think there was a serious lack of intolerance for error precursors in the work environment that we're going to look at. So when you don't report an improperly marked valve or a malfunctioning gauge or tag something out of service or immediately work to clean up a spill, do these things that prevent the work environment from having additional hazards and traps. If you don't give that feedback to procedures, essentially you're stating a comfort with error precursors in your workplace. Or you're telling yourself that someone else has responsibility for removing those error precursors that may affect you. And it may affect your safety in that an accident's going to occur in which you can be harmed, or it may affect your performance in that you're going to make a mistake because of the error precursors you've allowed to accumulate in the workplace. They're noticeable and obvious if you look for them. So this is hard because when you first get to the workplace, you may not be able to tell what is or is not important when it comes to changing your worksite conditions and being disciplined yourself to identify these error precursors. And so you may ignore some things that are important, and you might really pick a bone over things that aren't in the long run. But you do need to train yourself to be noticing now in school what things make you less successful at following a procedure, completing a test, right? A task that takes mental concentration and has a performance standard. When you struggle with short-term memory, when you struggle with concentrating on taking the information from assigned reading, and start creating that list of things that fall under the 3 that you personally can control, so that you're ready when you hit the workplace and you have a new set of environmental conditions to address, what error precursors you really need to address to start making yourself a successful and productive member of a healthy safety culture nuclear workforce. Does that make sense, what I'm saying there? Okay. INPO is a pseudo-regulatory body. They essentially put together event databases. So we read in that Mizumi text about the Japanese database that they've made with their several hundred, in 1995, they had 875 incidents and they made a database and they've kept doing that. INPO does the same thing. And from that database, they've actually done some analysis and they've compiled a list of common human performance, ergonomic, and human factors, sources of error precursors. So essentially, in the nuclear workforce, these are the most common conditions associated with events triggered by human error. And they've just put together a list. Under those 4 categories we talked about, task demands, individual capabilities, work environment, human nature, INPO has put together a list here of the top 8. I will say there was a typo in one of the quiz questions that Lynette pointed out for us. It's fixed now. I regraded those of you who had attempted the quiz and had that and gave you points if you selected the typo answer. So you might check your grade. You probably got some points back on an attempt. I apologize for that, but we got it fixed. Thank you, Lynette.
Mackenzie,
Yeah.
was that the one about communication and how it was not listed under individual capabilities?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
I didn't see that you had that question though, so I'll have to go regrade yours. You must have done it while I was regrading everyone else or something. So I'll check yours, Jack.
Okay.
Okay. As we go through these accidents over the rest of the semester, this is a great page to maybe just print out in your binder or have super easy access to, because I think you're going to see whenever we have a human making a mistake, you can probably pick 2 or 3 of these conditions and identify them in the accident. It's going to be rare when it's something outside this list. There are some other human factors issues that do occur, but these are by far the most common that we'll see. Okay, then we have some error prevention tools. If you look at page 69 in volume 1 of the Human Performance Fundamentals Dewey Handbook. Let's see, I think that I mean PDF 69. Let's see. Here's a better description of these, right? And some examples, just to kind of help you understand what scenarios can lead to these individual issues. So this is a good section to make sure that you've read in the Dewey Handbook. It's in the assigned reading, but I just wanted to point out its significance. Okay. There are 2 ways to prevent human error. Either keep people from making errors, error prevention, or prevent the errors from harming the facility, controls. When we design our systems, our structures, and our components, right, SSCs, everybody remember that acronym from last semester? We are essentially preventing errors from harming the facility. This again is the most common part of that Swiss cheese model. If we know that there's going to be errors, there's holes in the cheese, let's put a bunch of slices of cheese together so that none of those holes actually go from the human to the consequence of harming the facility, right? So physical barriers, interlocks. Interlocks are the biggest thing. Every reactor that you operate will have a series of rod control interlocks, depending on if it's a fueled or poisoned rod. If they're poisoned, it'll be rod withdrawal interlocks. And if your reactor period, which we'll learn about in reactor theory, but it has to go with how fast the reactor is going up in power, is going too fast, there will be an interlock, and you can push the controls to move the rods all you want. They're not going to withdraw. First, they're going to be reduced to the lowest speed. Then if you still keep withdrawing them, then they're just gonna be locked. You can't withdraw. And then if the period increases even more for some reason, it's gonna auto scram. And so even though you as the operator are supposed to move those rods and you're supposed to control the reactor power, there's an interlock to prevent certain conditions regardless of what the operator's doing, right? Human performance tools are designed to help people anticipate, prevent, and catch active errors, okay? Latent errors, you guys remember the definition from that from Wednesday?
An undetected situation or circumstance created by the past latent errors.
Yes. So by definition, people are unaware when a latent errors occur. So our error prevention tools are only going to help us with active errors when we're aware that an error occurred, okay? But there are a number of tools that can help us. There's a list of these in the reading, and we're going to talk about human performance improvement tools in another lecture. So now that we understand where these human errors come from, there are ways that we can deal with them, and we're gonna look at those, and we're gonna do some exercises and practice them. I just kind of wanted to push forward and let you guys know that that's coming. But today, we mostly want to look at identifying these different errors. Any questions on that content? Okay. Let's see. Let's look just briefly then at, oops, the Moodle page. There is a document. This human error vocab sheet. And it just has a really good set of definitions for common words that you're going to see when talking about human error, because they have specific definitions. Accident analysis, accident prevention, even though it's a very multidisciplinary field, and there are a lot of things about it that are very much soft and not technical, they have essentially stratified their approach into a very technical method so that they can analyze very technical fields, which is where a lot of the most impactful accidents tend to occur, right? In high technology. So there are standardized definitions, and words have very specific meaning when you're talking about error prevention, human factors, and accident analysis. So this is just a really helpful tool as we're going through this topic. Okay. All right, so we're gonna watch this video. I'm gonna show you guys the assignment ahead of time so you can kind of be thinking about what we're going to do. Sorry, let me mute those. List the types of human errors you can identify from the information in the video and explain why you think those human errors occurred. What was the specific thing contained in the video that made you say, oh yeah, this is this error? Identify at least 3. They don't have to be unique, like your group can come up with 3, but have at least 3. Based on the types of human errors that occurred, how would you evaluate the safety culture of this workplace? Are the individuals to blame? Is management allowing an error likely situation to predominate? What safety culture strengths or weaknesses do you see based on the types of errors that occurred? If you were on the accident investigation board for this incident, would you have any other questions that weren't addressed in this video? Is there anything you feel like you don't know that would be really important for evaluating the errors and the safety culture around this accident? And number 4, if you were an operator for this piece of machinery, and let's say specifically that you were hired after this accident and you're there as they're going forward, what changes would you suggest to either management or engineering to prevent a repeat of this event? Any questions on kind of what I want you guys to have in mind and be analyzing as we watch this? Okay. You guys will probably want to turn off the lights. Let me share the sound with the folks online.
If you were an operator for the tax machinery, what changes would you suggest to management or engineering to prevent?
Everybody ready? Okay.
Towers in the UK holds the current roller coaster record for most inversions. These 14 inversions though would drastically impact the future of the park with one tragic event. This is the story of the Smiler.
Join us. You belong to the Smiler. The Smiler, the world's first 14-looping roller coaster. Book now at altontowers.com.
You are now starting your correctional process.
The Black Hole was added to Alton Towers in 1984. The new ride captured the imagination of guests visiting the park. Located in a large tent, it was the park's second major coaster. It was even dismantled and modified to fit coupled trains instead of single trains to increase capacity of the popular ride. In 1997 though, something big was coming to the area. Every ride from the zone was removed except
Hey Mackenzie, we can't see the video.
construction began on Secret Weapon 4. The first of 2 world's first coasters that would eventually end up in the zone. In addition, Energizer and Enterprise were added and the area was rethemed to X Sector. The brand new zone was to be themed to a sinister, futuristic government facility. In 2005, Black Hole closed due to health and safety changes and Alton not wanting to spend money to bring it up to code, and Oblivion stood by itself as the only roller coaster in the zone. That though would change. The Black Hole was finally removed in 2007, leaving the tent empty. It would feature Scarefest mazes in 2011 before it was removed in 2012.
They say the perfect gift's a smile, but here at the Smiler Shop TV, our gift is a smile. Smile. We have just the thing to help you spread the happiness to everyone you meet. They'll be thankful you have. After all, who wouldn't want to receive a gift from the Smiler?
Plans on what would come in were submitted in December 2011 and granted in March, despite the usual opposition the park gets.
After fries go off the menu, he can't escape the craving.
It would be Gus Lauer who would build a new roller coaster for the park. Secret Weapon 7 was the first Infinity coaster, a variant on the popular Eurofighter model such as saw the ride. It had been quite some time since Alton had received a real Secret Weapon thrill ride, with over 10 years since Secret Weapon 5 in 2002 aired. I don't really count Secret Weapon 6 as a thrill ride.
Well, that ride was a bit timid. At least it's time now to get off. Apparently, little jolt there. Okay, let's get up. Ah!
No, that doesn't count. Less than a month before permission was granted, a new website launched where you could input your information to get updates on the new ride. Secret Weapon 7 would feature 2 chain lifts, one being vertical, a drop of 98 feet, and the most inversions on any roller coaster in the whole world. At the time, the ride with the most inversions was also at a Merlin park, with 10 on Colossus at Fort Park, tied with 1 in China, and another park was rumored to be working on an 11-loop ride. Alton didn't want to just beat that record, they wanted to smash it. The original brief called for 12 or more, and they came back with 14. Located on the site of the Black Hole, with 20 tons of soil removed from the site similar to Nemesis due to the tree line restrictions at the park. The new ride would cost £18 million and was squeezed into a very small footprint. It would be Alton Tower's longest roller coaster by track length. The track would be a very dark grey to fit the surrounding theme with a unique story. It was officially announced as the Smiler. A huge marketing campaign surrounded the upcoming attraction. Spray painting of the ride's logo, which resembles a smiling face, began to appear all over the park, and subliminal advertising appeared on different sections of the Alton Towers website. The logo began appearing all across the country, including billboards in London, train stations, and even projected onto buildings such as Big Ben. A selection of sheep flocks were also sprayed with the logo around the UK, which really got the media talking.
This week, we took the decision to paint sheep across the country to announce the name of our new world-first roller coaster, the Smiler.
That's what it's all about. Don't see me smiling.
I thought it was quite funny, actually.
I feel like I've had the wool pulled over my eyes.
Me too. I feel used.
Rubbish.
If I could describe the aviation community in one word, it would be family.
Camaraderie.
Multidimensional. Unique. Tight-knit. Tough. Awesome.
A countdown clock counted down to the ride opening on the 16th of March 2013. On the very early plans which were discovered, 8 inversions were seen, with a dark tone, an industrial grunge-style station, and while the dimensions of the final result were the same, the theme was completely different. Original theming elements shown were a giant mechanical spider, which the ride would fly through the legs of, and while this was incorporated, this element was completely different to the originally planned X-Sector industrial theming seen on the early plans. A Smiler video game for mobile was released, and it had a much brighter theme.
Hello, my name is Dr. Kelman. I'm Chief of Medicine here at the Sanctuary. May I wish you all a very sincere welcome. By choosing the Sanctuary, you can rest assured you're in safe hands. After all, we are the market leader in social compliance treatment.
From before the ride's opening in 2012 through to 2014, Scarefest at the park featured a haunted maze themed to the ride located inside the iconic towers, which would introduce the ride story and introduce the world to the Ministry of Joy. This old facility allowed you to check yourself in for a checkup for those who were down or had lost their smile. This concept was called Marmalization and was developed by the secret group called the Ministry of Joy. 50 years ago, Dr. Kalman, the head of the project, used a team to experiment on the mind and body for an increased social satisfaction, as they put it. This method, though, often led to disfigured subjects who had been caged away in the basement of the sanctuary, and that was the story of this haunted maze. And this maze was actually pretty good.
Each selected treatment accesses various parts of the body and of the mind in order to abolish any reoccurrence of any complaints. Welcome, my friends, to the Sanctuary.
In 2012, the Ministry had returned with new modern methods to save us from the tragedy known as sorrow. The first patient to be marmalized was Miles Cedars.
State your name, please.
Miles Cedars.
You do understand why you're here, don't you, Miles?
He was only halfway marmalized, but it worked, and they kept going and wanted to spread joy to many more. The center of the Smiler ride features the Marmalizer, and you, the rider, were volunteering to take this experience. The different processes seen on the Marmalizer, the spider-like structure in the center of the ride, are their inoculator, where a serum is injected into the patients by syringe to give them a boost of joy, the tickler, where you are simply tickled until you can't not smile, the flasher, where bright lights from above will blind and disorient the patient, the giggler, which used laughing gas to force you to laugh, and the hypnotizer, where swirling illusions were used to disorientate and mesmerize you.
Actually, Danny, can we have a look at these? Get them on camera. It says Miles Cedars tests.
Hey, stick him in your bag. No, seriously, stick him in the bag. They might be good for research or something.
Do you think? Right.
In January, the countdown time was removed and the opening of the ride was delayed, now planning to open in May 2013. To compensate for the delay, the park opened the Sanctuary Maze until mid-April. The official date for the opening was set as May 16th, 2013. This wasn't met though due to delays in construction. The following day, a press event was held and a train stopped on the lift hill and riders were stuck for an hour before being evacuated. A new opening date of May 23rd was announced. The resort was booked out solid for the opening and the hype of the new attraction was huge. Marketing was seen everywhere and the world record looping roller coaster was about to open. Except, it wasn't. Less than 24 hours before opening, the resort announced it would not again be opening due to teething problems. Tickets were revalidated and the hotel stays were rebooked with no clue when it would actually open. Eventually, it did of course open on May 31st with no prior announcement at midday. The compact ride begins with a hidden inversion inside before entering the first lift hill, and directly after, a blur of inversions hit you for both halves of the ride. After its opening, the ride was closed multiple times due to technical issues. Twice within a week in early June, the train stalled during test runs during the ride's Batwing element before the park opened. The following month, 48 people were evacuated from the ride after an item fell from a section of the track described by riders as a 1 foot long metal bar or some kind of bolt. It caused 2 sections of the track to disengage, creating a small gap. Shortly after, the ride was closed for 5 days after cracks were found in the base of one of the ride's supports. Later in the same year, 4 people were injured when they were struck by guide wheels that detached from the chain during the vertical lift hill. So as you can see, the opening year was quite troublesome. Unfortunately though, something more tragic was going to occur 2 years after opening that would severely damage the park's reputation, attendance and income, and seriously injure multiple people. As a word of warning, some of the following footage and information may be distressing.
It's dubbed the most terrifying roller coaster ride on Earth. This afternoon at 2:09, the terror became reality. 16 people were in the carriage which collided with an empty car on the Smiler roller coaster.
On a very windy day on June 2nd, 2015, the ride was operated as normal, even though winds had reached 46 miles per hour and it was suggested not to operate over 34 miles per hour. Shortly after 1 PM, the ride issued a warning light indicating a fault. Visitors on the ride were removed and engineers were called. At this point, the ride had been operating with 4 trains on the track. Staff had been told to add a 5th train due to the number of guests in the park and decided to do this while the ride was empty. While the 5th train was being added, employees sent an empty carriage around the track to check operation was normal. This empty train though failed to make it up the incline and a warning system was activated. Engineers successfully fixed this issue with the empty train. Due to a breakdown of communication, the engineers on site had not been told a 5th train had been added and began the process to restart the ride. With staff preparing to allow visitors back onto the ride, another empty train was sent around and failed to make the climb and roll back down the track and came to a rest in a valley. Operators on the ride were unaware the train was stuck on the track and the first car full of passengers was sent around the track. As it climbed the first lift hill, the ride system stopped it from moving ahead, indicating the track ahead was occupied as it was designed to do. The engineer, still not aware that 5 trains were on the track, checked the location of the 4 he believed were active and did not see the 5th train sat stalled on the track. He later stated he felt he was pressured to minimize downtime on rides. Along with a colleague, they overrode the safety warning and the train with passengers continued up the lift hill. This train then slammed into the stalled car, creating what some described as a horror scene similar to a 90 miles per hour car crash. As hundreds watched on in panic, the 2 cars rocked back and forth along the track with passengers at the front trapped between the crash barrier of the train. It took almost 20 minutes for the first 999 call to be made. The injured passengers sat trapped on the track for 4 to 5 hours before they were able to be released from the carriage, with some suffering from significant blood loss. The injuries resulted in leg amputations, shattered knees and punctured lungs.
If you think about how many theme parks there are in the world, and therefore how many thousands of people must ride on roller coasters every single day, well, statistically, incidents like this are very rare indeed. But Alton Towers has said that this accident is the worst in its history.
This tragic accident changed the lives of 16 people riding the train forever. Right after the incident, the Smiler, Saw the Ride and 2 other roller coasters at Chessington World of Adventure were closed while investigations got underway. Alton Towers was closed completely for 5 days as a result. After this, the Smiler remained closed while the other Merlin Parks rides were reopened.
I'm Neil Craig. I'm HSE's Head of Operations for the Midlands. When people visit theme parks, they should be able to enjoy themselves safely. On 2nd of June last year, Merlin Attractions Operations Limited failed to protect their customers. They let them badly down. It is right that they've been held to account for those failings in a criminal court.
Merlin were fined £5 million for a failure of health and safety rules over the crash. They also rejected the idea that they had put pressure on employees to keep downtime to a minimum over safety. The impact of this crash would affect the resort drastically, and even to this day they work to recover. Attendance plummeted after the incident, and Alton reported a $14 million drop in revenue as a result of the crash. Multiple rides were closed in relation to the revenue loss, and investment into the park reached a new low. New safety measures were introduced, and compensation claims still continue to be assessed.
Throughout the last 16 months, we have been very aware that we would end up here today facing a substantial penalty, and that has now been delivered. However, what I would like to say is that Alton Towers, and indeed the wider Merlin Group, are not emotionless corporate entities. They're made up of human beings who care passionately about what they do. And in that respect, the far bigger punishment for all of us is the knowledge that on this occasion we let people down with such devastating consequences. It is something none of us will ever forget, and it is something we are utterly determined will never be repeated.
Nobody set out to hurt somebody that tragic day, but the impossible had happened. The Smiler did reopen in March 2016 with new safety checks and all references to correction and marmalization removed. Many people still remain cautious to ride the attraction, but no further incidents have occurred since. The Smiler crash was not only foul in every aspect of the business, but also with the employees who called the park home, as well as the passengers who were injured, and continues to be a devastating day that the park has been working hard to put behind them. For many though, it will never be forgotten, and is sadly what this record-breaking ride is now known for. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to join us on future expeditions and follow us.
Nobody died, but there were several people who got their legs amputated. And it was like, 19 and 20-year-old people who were at a theme park, and they ended up with one or both legs amputated.
That's why you don't like roller coasters?
I don't like roller coasters because they are entirely profit driven, and they typically at theme parks employ 15 to 18-year-old operators. Don't have to pay very much, have no training, and will do exactly that. Put a car on a train without telling anybody because their boss told them to do it. It's also why I don't like to ride the rides at like fairs, because you take down and assemble in huge amounts of time pressure in order to start getting people in to make money and not pay your crew until you have people coming in to make money. It just is like such an error likely situation that I don't like to do it. I'm also afraid of heights, which contributes as well, but.
Have you seen the rocket at Lagoon? Dude,
I haven't.
Sun is killing me. I didn't want to be the one to say it.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe. Joe. I was pretty close, but I just didn't know if everybody was on board with that.
So Porter and Jack, I'm gonna turn the volume down so that you guys can discuss without coming through the microphone to everybody. If you guys want to kind of split into a couple groups, maybe like the side, middle, and other side of the classroom, and answer those 4 questions and just take a few minutes for discussion, and then we'll all talk about it as a group in a little bit.
Sounds good. There, Porter.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay. So I'm looking through the DOE thing.
I'm trying to get it pulled up. There it is.
Okay. Do you think she means when it says identify 3 human error types? Is that the precursors, or is
That's what I'm wondering too, because I was looking at the PowerPoint and it says there are 4 categories.
Oh, okay, so that's probably, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I think we can find that in the DOE book. That roller coaster looked fun though.
Kind of. It was so jittery for the video was. I was having a hard time looking at it, not get sick.
Right. Okay. I think there's a page in here that has those graph. It's like a graph that has the 4 different ones. Let's see if I can find it.
there's thousands of money, there's thousands of dollars just to go on one ride. That's why it's crazy, you get all these people on that time pressure. Right, and you know that.
Let's see. I guess we could just look at it from the PowerPoint. So there's task demands, individual capabilities, work environment, and human nature. So definitely time pressure, because I would say first, the like theme park itself was under a crunch to try to get it done because there kept being a bunch of delays.
Yep.
And so they were just like rushing between those delays to try to get it done. And then also the operator said he felt like he was under a time pressure. And so that's why he wasn't like thoroughly checking if there was an extra car or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. There was one that was work environment, general influences of the workplace organization. It's kind of the same thing what you're just saying. They just want to get people in as fast as they can.
Yeah. We could also say under work environment, we could say distractions because it is a damn theme park.
Yeah.
Just swirling stuff and stuff like that. So even the operator could be distracted from his own environment.
It's true. Yeah, lots of lights and sounds.
Yeah. I'm just trying to come up with stuff that we can talk about.
Uh-huh.
And same with human nature, stress because of time stress. Habit patterns. We can say that because the operator's always, I mean, you know, he hits the go button like 1,000 times a day.
Yep.
So habit patterns.
I'm trying to write these down.
Okay. And then let's see. We'll go to the assignment. I don't remember what the rest of the questions were.
So we have to identify loop 3. We did that. Based on the types of human errors that occurred, how would you evaluate the safety culture of this workplace? Or?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing though. It's kind of like they kind of just show you one very specific part of it, you know?
Yeah, because it sounds like they didn't have any instances with the other rides since they opened up so fast.
Yeah. So I mean, they in general, it didn't seem like they had a bunch of accidents, but definitely for this one, it seemed like the work culture, I guess we'll say the work culture suffered for this ride in particular, probably because it cost so much money that they were really pushing.
Exactly.
Done. So, okay.
It was brand new. Yeah.
I'll say work culture suffered. To cost, it increased their time constraints or whatever they're trying to push it through.
Yeah, it starts out a little weird, doesn't it?
Increased pressure. So if you were on the accident investigation board for this incident, what other questions would you have that were not addressed in this video? Maybe like what we were just saying, I would probably be looking into other accidents in the past, or if there were any, to really try to evaluate the work or what the safety culture is like. Just to see if this was like a isolated incident because of, you know, they had to get this right up and going, or if it's an actual like ongoing issue.
Yeah.
The crazy, the hype culture, I don't know if that directly connects. I think it plays in the fact that they were rushing it too. Hyping everybody up.
Alright. If you're an operator for this piece of machinery, what changes would you suggest to management or engineering in order to prevent a repeat of this event? Well, obviously, it should have talked to the engineers. So probably
Yeah.
like a checklist. Like first you have to clear it with engineer, then you have to clear it with your supervisor or something.
Oh yeah, or actually, the operators written procedure so that like every time they hit the go button, they have to go through and do like you said, a checklist off that procedure of
Yeah.
looking how many cars.
Which they probably already have one, but I don't. Engineers probably weren't included on that.
Yeah, that's probably true. So okay, yeah, let's just say like checklist and definitely opening up modes of communication between engineers and operators.
Yeah.
Because that was really the biggest issue is that there was no communication.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So yeah, how about checklist and communication?
There's the one that's like on the top of the oh god, what's the
Maybe doing like a each day in the morning or whatever, they kind of do like a safety brief where everyone gets together to kind of discuss like you know this where the status of all the rides and if there's anything normal.
We could do something with that, how they overrode that safety switch. So maybe you have to have like 2 keys or something, one from engineering, one from operators, you know, in 2 separate locations.
I missed that. Did they override a safety switch?
Yeah, when the car full of people came up to the top of the crest, it stopped, and the engineers overrode because the system saw there was another car on the track, and the engineers
Okay.
overrode that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's a good idea then, having like a dual or like a peer check for overriding safety switches.
Yeah.
I'm trying to use the words she likes to hear.
I know. That's good. Peer check for overriding safety systems. Yeah, I like that.
All right. Well, that's all of them.
I think so. So for the first question, time pressure, was that a air precursor category?
So it's under so it's under task demands.
Oh yeah.
So we can say the task demands, the issues we identified were the time pressure. And then under work environment, there were a lot of distractions. And then under human nature, there was stress and habit patterns. And there's a bunch. We could even, individual capabilities. There was like unsafe attitudes because the engineers just went and overrid the thing without, looking further into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to write it down as you're talking.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah, and I wonder if they could. So like that cage is in their guts when they, maybe like a bigger.
You think we have to submit something for this, or do you think she's just? Oh yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We have so many.
I'm happy it's due later, dude. I'm done doing homework for the week.
Have you finished those calculations?
Yes, I did.
And I'm like halfway through and they're killing me.
Yeah, I spent like 2.5 hours and I did two like office hour Zoom meetings with her yesterday.
Really?
I just wanted to get it done because I'm going to Target this weekend, so I just wanted to get all my stuff done.
Oh yeah, definitely. What do you think of this ethics class so far?
I was worried about it until yesterday, because then in class, I was like, oh, this will be pretty easy, I think, because that guy just likes to talk, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I was doing the readings. I don't know. It was hard for me.
Oh, me too.
Just like those annotations. Because I read what other people be like saying, and I'm like, I didn't think that at all.
Right. Well, he must have upvoted one of your things because he didn't get called on.
Yeah, he did.
That's cool. He upvoted one of mine too, and then he called on me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I sent him an email about it, and I was like, maybe I misunderstood.
I got triple points.
Yeah, I hope so. That's kind of what I was fishing for, is maybe he'll give me extra points. Yeah, I think it'll be all right though. Seems like in class, if you get called on, you only have to talk for like 3 minutes, and then he just wants to talk.
Yeah, yeah. But like he was saying from that like list of questions, I did 5 of them because I was at the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
And everybody used my questions.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh.
I did 5 or 6, and I was at the bottom, and I was like, man, I could have done like 2 or 3 because no one picked mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was freaking out because I was like, he's gonna call me. I'm not gonna have anything.
That's funny.
But it sounded like people were just like, they didn't even do it like before. They were just picking them off the top of their heads. So.
I know they'd pick one and then just be like, I think that's false because of this. And you'd be like, yes, exactly.
It's like, what? I spent like half an hour writing everything down.
I did too. Yeah, I think it would be easy years ago. What other classes?
What?
What other classes do you have? Do you have a pretty heavy workload?
No, I'm only doing 13 credits.
Nice, dude. That's
so
sweet.
it's but yeah, then I have to do one more semester of chem and math.
Oh yeah, that's right. So did you just drop out of stats last semester?
Yeah. Yeah,
Just do it next.
Yeah, dude, the online was difficult.
Yeah, that would be hard.
I'm trying to get them to accept I took a business stats class.
Uh-huh.
And I'm trying to get them to accept that, but they're being like pushy about it.
Yeah. What sucks is I have to have, I think it's Ryan Pitcher who makes all the decisions on stuff like that.
Would that be acceptable?
Yeah, and I don't know I don't know, because I thought the classes were like the exact same.
But, yeah. I mean, it's 100 level stats class. It's not going to be that different.
We didn't kind of.
Exactly.
I don't know.
No, I signed up for it online, and with that
there's other notes because when I was watching the video, these were actually some of my notes that I added.
Materials class last semester that kicked my butt.
Yeah.
I think I just
can't do
both.
Yeah.
There might be things in each discussion that some other people have identified that you might add.
Are you gonna do that first?
Yeah.
Are we gonna like present our answers? Did she say?
I think we're just gonna have a class discussion about it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's.
Or is it?
Let's see. It's due by midnight.
Oh. Can we do one submission for?
And it's actually midnight next week. It's supposed to be midnight tonight. No, it'll be an individual submission, but like as you guys are discussing, if you guys are taking notes on what all of you as a group are coming up with, like your submission could be very similar, and that's fine because you're discussing in a group. And then we're in maybe a few more minutes, maybe another 5 or 10 minutes, we're gonna all discuss as a class what each group kind of came up with and what we think the errors are and why. Your groups feel like 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
Type in the chat.
Are you gonna type her?
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
I gotta get the kid out of bed.
Oh.
And the engineer is not fault. However, that's not the reason it's happening. The reason it's happening is because there's so much time and time. He could have easily pulled that down and not have it. So he's stuck there around perfect.
How many credits you got this semester?
I'm at 16.
That's not
I think.
bad. What are you doing?
I think it's 16. I can't remember, but I have like all the core classes, and ethics class, and then chemistry.
Oh, you doing chem?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I would be at 16, right? Because we're taking all the same classes, but I'm taking that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too bad.
Are you doing that in person or how are you doing it?
No, it's online. Like, so he does the class in person, but then he does a section of it that's just online. So I just took the online one.
Oh yeah.
And he records all of his like you can watch his lectures in person, but he also records them. So if you miss it, go back and watch it.
That's nice. Does it come with a lab?
No, yeah, it's actually pretty chill. Like, he just kind of he does 2 lectures and there's 1 homework assignment every week. And I think his quizzes and exams are like pretty much right off the homework stuff. So.
Dang, that's the only reason I didn't do it this semester because I thought there was a lab.
No, man, it's probably not too late if you wanted to. Me and Joe were taking it, so we could all kind of work through it together. But if you're already taking another semester.
You know, that's the thing, like, I don't know. My next semester would just be 9 credits.
Yeah, right. What else do you have to take? So you have chemistry, math, and what else?
It's like a history class or something, world history.
Oh, okay. Just to do the objective 6 or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just do it next semester.
Yeah.
Sucks, but.
Yeah, but at least it'll be pretty chill. Just 12 credits.
Yeah. Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Oh, I did. Oh, God. Yeah.
Okay, does any group feel like they need more time? We can take another 5 minutes if you haven't discussed all the questions. Okay. Jack and Porter, I turned your volume back up so we can hear you guys again.
Thanks.
Okay, let's start with online. Jack and Porter, what are the
Porter, she turned you back up, buddy.
The baby
Sorry.
So, did you say you wanted to start with us on the first question?
Yeah, what are some of the human errors you identified?
Okay, so the first was under the task demands was definitely time pressure. In a couple of different spots actually, because the the resort as a whole, like when they were trying to get the ride up and running, they kind of kept delaying when they were going to be starting it, and then had a new day and then delayed it because obviously I think they said it cost 18 million pounds or whatever because it was so expensive. They were really pushing to try to get some asses in the seats and get some money coming in. And then next under, let's see, work environment was distraction because the operator is obviously like working in the middle of a theme park. So I think there probably was a lot of just kind of noises going on, a lot of flashing lights, a lot of swirling things and stuff. And it's just kind of a distracting environment where someone would, you know, maybe not always be paying the closest attention, especially if they are like an 18-year-old kid, you know, working in a theme park. Then do you want to go ahead, Porter?
Yeah, so, and then for the second question, you said work culture suffered specifically with this ride mainly because it was new and there was a lot of pressure to get the ride going and get as many people on it as fast as possible.
For the first question, was there a third human error you guys identified? I heard you say time.
Yeah, human nature.
Yeah.
In what way?
We talked about the habit patterns because again, with that operator, like, you know, he's hitting the go button like 1,000 times a day. And so it'd be pretty easy to just assume every time more people get on the ride, it's going to be just like the last time people were on the ride and nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to go wrong. It's just, you know, you're forming that habit of everything's fine around me right now. So I can keep just doing the same thing without double checking.
Yeah, I agree with those. Marcus and Lynette, what 3 did you guys pick out?
Communication is our first one, lack of communication. And then time pressure as well.
And what did you guys identify as the time pressure?
Getting the people in the seats to ride the rides. They were trying to get those customers satisfied over safety.
Okay.
And then our third one, we chose complacency. Knowing that there were prior issues and
And I guess that's what the communication, you have to, 2 different instances that we pointed out. There was the lack of knowing about the 5th train with the engineer, but then it also said it took them 20 minutes to call emergency response. So the communication definitely was a huge problem with these people. And with pressure, time pressure, there was the overall problem with the resort. And then the engineer himself also said that he specifically felt time pressure in his task that he was doing to just get things going quickly.
What about the group of ladies? What?
we pretty much got the same ones with lack of communication, time pressure, and ignoring safety rules.
Ignoring safety rules.
I think cars were going to be key because they were adding extra cars.
Okay. Matching with what Jack said, you have an operator who's in this habit pattern mindset of every time I push this button, it's the exact same thing. It's a group of loud people who are going to go on the train and I'm going to wait here in line with everyone else and they're going to come back and just doing the same thing. But all of a sudden, that person didn't recognize that there had been a departure from routine. Another car had been added to the track. So yeah, I think that those 2 together, while opposite, really created some of the issues because there was that mindset and then there was a situation where that mindset didn't apply. This group, what did you guys come up with?
We argued, kind of talked about a lot of the internal human factors that play into it. Like, you know, there's that inability to evaluate operational dangers. You know, you also talk about the time crunch, you talk about lack of experience. So there's a lot of things we can kind of presume based on how the situation went. The staff probably wasn't trained well enough. The engineer probably didn't have any engineering controls needed.
Did anybody talk about or think about the fact that the time pressure and value of production over safety was in the first place the reason another car was put on the tracks, right? Management said we're not getting people through this line and onto the ride fast enough, so let's put another car on. Because there might have been time pressures that may not have been enough to be an error precursor, even though they were creating an error likely environment. But then we put another train on. We made a change in response to that error precursor, right? So we took the group of operators took an action at the behest of management. And then all of these other human errors, distraction, communication, complacency, now all created the situation where because of that action of putting the train on the car, there was an error. Did that one stick out to anybody? Okay.
Well, yeah, I just wondered why there was another car on there at all.
I know that's what.
If they weren't prepared for that.
Yeah. And so not only did they ignore the situational awareness there and the environmental error precursors, they took an opposite action due to time pressure and probably profit-driven decisions. And then that created our environment where our accident actually happened.
I also wonder, like, how many employees were actually working that ride? Did it say?
It didn't say. It said operators, engineers, the engineer, and management, which, except for the specific engineer who said that he felt time pressure, they didn't tell us a number for any of those groups.
I wonder how many people hold multiple bodies.
Yeah, and I also know that sometimes some places will call people engineers who are not actually trained engineers, right? So your ride engineer might just be the person who isn't the 18-year-old operator, but they may not actually be a trained engineer, because the design engineers who built this, like, they would have had to bring actual civil and mechanical engineers for that. But the engineers who maintain it might have been techs who were not trained for that level of responsibility, right? So that's, I have seen that in a lot of places as well. It was an operator who got promoted to being called an engineer. Okay, so based on the human errors that we've identified and discussed here, what do you guys think about the safety culture of this workplace?
Poor,
Why?
because they weren't following safety protocols and they were rushing employees for a profit.
Sam?
They became placed in other rides that were not accidents, so they just assumed they never would. Safety wasn't the most important thing in that situation, clearly, so that was obviously before, you know?
Yeah. No, so that, you know, at the end of the video, they showed a statement from the legal representation for the company after they got tried and convicted and fined a huge amount for being negligent. And then the narrator made the comment that he didn't think any of the employees set out to hurt anybody. But I think that complacency attitude had infected everyone in that workplace because they had a lot of rides. They'd been building rides. They'd been opening scab attractions while they tried to get everything fixed with this. They had another park owned by the same company that had way more than any other roller coaster, the inversions, right? And then they were just going to build the next one with more inversions. And I think that they very much believed that an accident couldn't happen to them. And I think that was a whole lot why things are safe. And, you know, that statement, thousands of people ride roller coasters, very few accidents occur. Sure, they are usually well designed with the assumption that you could have a 15-year-old kid operating them. So they need to have all their interlocks be automatic and require somebody who's in management or called an engineer or may actually be an engineer come in and evaluate safety interlocks. Like a lot of those systems, I think probably are very successful, just given that we don't hear about a ton of roller coaster accidents. But they didn't view any of those individual requirements as important enough to stop them, and they kept overriding. Anyone else notice anything else on the safety culture that stuck out to them?
Inaccurate risk perception.
Yes.
The uncertainty of the hazard. Information and perception.
How many people's life would not have been affected if they had a log system that people had to review before they started up that confirmed how many trains were on the track? That also. Yep. Okay. Jack and Porter, if you guys were on an accident investigation board, did you have any other questions that weren't addressed in this video?
So what we talked about was actually kind of going off the second question as well, is that we said that it's also kind of difficult to get an idea of what the overall safety culture is like, because this is kind of like a small picture like of what happened with this one ride. And I mean, obviously they overlooked a bunch of stuff, but one of the other questions that we would ask is kind of like what other accidents had occurred in the past, or we would try to just dig in a little bit more to help identify what the overall safety culture is like, because especially when it comes to like pointing fingers, it's a lot easier to get mad at a company who has been consistently over a long period of time just had a poor safety culture. Or we'd want to identify if this was kind of like a isolated incident with this one ride because it cost so much money, so they really wanted to get people on it. So that was mainly what we talked about.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, right? This was a new ride. Was this a bunch of new staff that hadn't been previously with the company at the other rides? Because, Merlin, the company that owns the Afton Towers, had another really big inversion roller coaster that didn't have an accident. Would they have not had this accident if they brought some of those staff? Like, was it this specific work group that had an issue because they had been delayed and they weren't open when they wanted to be? We don't know that. I think it is somewhat condemning to the organization as a whole, the amount of the settlement that they got fined with, because I'm sure some of that information came out in that trial, but we don't know. We don't know if it was just this group or the whole company at large. What about in the classroom? What else did you guys want to know more about? Sam.
Just engineering controls, like if there's a part that's still on the track, why were they able to set another part that doesn't really make sense? Lockouts, when it comes to rules and guidelines and how it's operated. Was it that administration wasn't doing their job, make sure that their standards followed, or was it employees not following their standards?
Kyle.
I was thinking more like, air precursors, I guess. What was like, is that, are they all standing up, are they all falling asleep, is it too hot, are they, like, is the environment not conducive to safety, I guess? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Are they able to do their job efficiently, safely, properly, I guess?
Okay.
Is it too hot in there, are they all falling asleep, like, you know what I mean? I guess, does that contribute to it? I wouldn't know, but.
Yeah, no, theme parks can have, lots of environmental issues. I didn't like them as a kid because of how loud and obnoxious everyone standing in line with you was.
Yeah.
I can't imagine working there as an operator. Caden and then Sam again.
Kind of goes off the safety culture too, but for number 3, I would ask, were there procedures that you had to follow, put in place? Why did you continue to operate the ride even at high risk speeds? It kind of just goes off the safety culture. They knew that it was supposed to be shut down at those wind speeds and they just continued to run.
Not only continued, but increased capacity. Yeah. Sam?
Yeah, exactly.
Why did it take so long to call emergency responders?
So my guess is going to be because they didn't know that that train was on the track. When the second train carrying people collided with it, and they got the same warning that it didn't make it up the next hill, that they'd been overriding for the previous 2 instances, I don't think that anybody knew what happened. And whatever they were trying to do to get things back, this time there were people on the cart. So if an empty cart had been pushed back, like obviously now they knew, well, this wasn't right. I think it took them that long to even figure out that there had been another train on the car and there could have been an accident. Also, just as an aside, something that happens because humans, we don't handle stress very well. It's a really studied phenomenon in emergency and first response. We, like as a classroom, if we saw something terrible happen in front of us, most of us would not call 911. We would assume someone around us was responsible for that as we kind of just dealt with the shock of whatever we were witnessing. So if the accident was in view of other members of the park, and I would think, hey, they saw that, someone's going to call 911. The first thing they train you when you're a first responder is you have to actually say before anything else, you, not someone, pick someone and point to them, you call 911. Because then that person feels a personal responsibility for what's going on instead of just kind of sitting there in shock and the group think attitude. So it also could have been that as the operators were struggling to figure out what happened from their area, we don't know if they had cameras on those areas of the track so that they could see, hey, this is an area where we've had trains get stuck traditionally. So now we have a camera so we can give another check and verify that all our instruments are reading correctly, that it's back where it should be, right? Doesn't say. They may have been struggling to figure it out, and if anyone else had witnessed it, they're not calling. Typically, when you go on a ride that has you go upside down, they have a locker where you have to take everything out of your pocket. So the people on the actual train may not have had a cell phone to make a call, right? Cattell?
Like, before you're employed there, was anybody trained for CPR or any kind of medical treatment? You think that with a ride, that almost like a mandatory job?
Yeah, and it took, 5 hours to get people off that train, during which time they were losing blood, right? Was there any thought of, if an accident occurs, what is the responsibility for our operators and our park staff as we wait for emergency medical services? If they had been able to set their ladders up or set cranes up while they were waiting for the emergency responders to get there, could they have been handing out tourniquets, right? I have no idea if that was considered. Any other questions you guys had after the video? Okay, so I want every person to answer this one. If you were an operator for this piece of machinery, what changes would you suggest to prevent a repeat? Caden.
So it said that there should be safety locks to prevent the operators from setting the train car when there's a car stopped on the track. So like you push the button, nothing will happen, you know. And also, I just thought of this, like, I know there's cameras, but what if they have this, like a watch station or like controls are right there and you can actually visualize the, I don't know, like, that'd be like an engineering control kind of thing, but I just thought that would be something cool to take it place with. And better procedures.
Yeah. Or at least better procedure adherence.
Yeah.
We don't know if they had good procedures that weren't followed or if they didn't have good procedures. Who's next? Sam.
One through growth is like a farm. That way everyone knows that this is happening on that piece of equipment, not just the engineer that gets that farm. Being grown in the field.
So interesting question there. Do you think it would be good or bad if the public in line could hear or see alarms for a piece of equipment they're about to ride on?
I think it'd be great. I mean, it's Disneyland and all these other theme parks give this illusion that everything's perfect and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, as consumers, we know we're riding a piece of equipment. It's in a car, we have alarms and gauges and everything to tell us this is a safe operating system and this is how we stay safe is by seeing those alarms or hearing those alarms. So having access to that, even as a consumer, I think it just proves that we're trying to keep this as safe as possible. We're not trying to deceive you on how safe it is.
Joe.
I would ask them to make changes that would compare their amusement park to something that is recreational but is known to be dangerous, like skydiving. People recreate that way, but it's serious business. And now the carnival is just a nonstop party. And so it's a safety culture thing.
Yeah.
I would say get more serious.
Yeah, look at
Make your staff organized like a military. You know, you have people giving orders, people taking orders. That's the way it is.
change the cultural perception within the company of what you're doing. Who's next? Okay. Do you have any specific suggestions you'd implement?
Taking a harder look at the procedures and what, what steps should be taken first.
Okay. Kyle?
I mean, going back to engineering, as far as like the actual stop or, and when we talked about it, it's kind of hard to stop a moving roller coaster at how many pounds at what speed. But maybe, if there's two cars on one side of the track, like, that's not good, or maybe even, engineering control as far as like the car structure. Maybe they would have had a bigger bumper or something, that front seat wasn't like right there on the rail. Maybe the people wouldn't have lost their legs. So, maybe that structural improvement.
Okay. Jennifer?
We talked about maintenance, doing really making sure the owner checks before each ride.
Okay. Haley?
Implementing some kind of communication exercises during training and maybe setting up a radio communication with everyone working on the ride or whoever's working with the ride.
Okay. Better communication, okay. Amber, what about you?
I was thinking that it should be a little harder to override safety alarms. It seemed like they're like, oh, there's a problem, we didn't look at it, we don't know what's wrong, and just continued on anyway. So, yeah, I think it's a lot harder to override.
Yeah, it seemed like the same operator who created the situation, received the alarm, could clear it and continue operating. Marcus?
I don't really have anything new to say. I definitely think there should have been a change in priorities, more about safety rather than satisfaction of the customer. Have limits on when you can operate, like with the wind thing, that's probably something that should be addressed. And just if we have situations like that, there should be some training, someone to stop and say, maybe we shouldn't be running today.
Porter, what about you? What would you suggest as a change if you were an operator for this machinery?
So I thought of peer checks when overriding any kind of safety mechanism, because I think that was the problem, was the engineers overrode the safety mechanism.
Yeah, so yeah, so that actually is my answer too. I think the number one thing I would suggest is peer checks, so that not just the operations group can put a train on the tracks. They have to get a peer check by someone from engineering. They can't clear an alarm without a peer check, so that someone else has a chance to catch, well, wait, it's not making it up. Our wind speed is too high. Maybe the headwind is what's preventing this train from overcoming that. We don't know how many have come back, right? I think peer checks as just a single most powerful thing would have really helped this particular accident. All the other ideas, absolutely, I completely agree with. But I think that if we just had to make one change, I think that would have been really significant. What about you, Jack?
My suggestion would also be, I know that people already said it, but mine would definitely be communication, changing how they communicate things, because it seems a little crazy that like a part of a safety system can be overridden, and that's not communicated to everybody involved. So that's that.
Yeah, very much agree. Did I miss anyone? Everyone answered, right? Yeah? Okay. All right. So it was supposed to be due at midnight tonight. I am going to change that. It's not supposed to be something you work on for a week. It's just supposed to be what we discussed in class. Make sure that's down on a piece of paper. Upload that to Moodle. Any other questions?
You said that is due tonight?
Due tonight by midnight. Just
When are you gonna change it? It just says that it won't accept January 22nd.
I'll change it right now because it's supposed to be today.
Are we gonna do more of these throughout the semester?
Mm-hmm. So today is.
You said it has to be written down, I can't type it, or?
You can type it.
Oh, okay.
That's why I give you until midnight, so that you have some time. If you don't want to just take your written notes from class, you can make it.
You won't understand my written notes from class. So.
You what?
You probably won't understand my notes from class, so.
Yeah, that was my concern, is that as you had your thought process and were scribbling whatever, I wouldn't be able to interpret it. Okay, well, we're done a little bit early. That is a lot of what our case studies are going to be like. That's why I encourage you to be here for class on Fridays. It's a little easier to discuss when we're in person. So hopefully you guys found that exercise enjoyable. Okay. I will see most of you next week, and I'll see a few of you in the reactor ops class.
Can you help me with the theory?
Yes. Yes, I can.
Yes, I want to see. Yeah.
Okay.
We
We can just do that in here, since we're supposed to have class in here for 20 more minutes. And I think that there's another class in the other classroom, so I wouldn't be able to get to the whiteboard. Okay, what is your question, Haley?
Well, I don't think I'm doing the math correctly.
Okay,
Can you go over 8, 9, and 10?
I can.
And 137.
Okay, let me.
Don't get 1 through 7.
I don't know if you guys, Porter and Jack, you could hear, but they asked me to go over the reactor theory worksheet while we're in class.
I'm sticking
I don't
around
know
for
if okay, I don't know if you'll be able to see the board really well, but if you have questions, feel free to ask. Okay, so question 8. What is your question, Haley?
What's the equation?
So, what I did with the mass defect for the calculations, I don't think I did it right. Like, that's not what you're looking for, is it?
Not quite. So for 8, 9, and 10, when I said write the complete reaction equation, I meant like from chemistry, your chemical reaction equation, right? So what happens when we scatter? I know a few of you who've been asking me questions also went ahead and calculated mass defect in these 3 problems. Since that was not what I attended, but several people have done it and done it correctly, I'm going to give extra credit to those of you who complete that for those questions. But what I was looking for, so question 8, read the statement for me.
A neutron elastically scatters with an H1 nucleus. Write the complete reaction equation.
Okay, so a neutron is going to scatter with a hydrogen. How many protons does hydrogen have? How many neutrons? 0. So what's the A number? What's the Z number? The Z number of protons or neutrons? Okay. The neutron, how many protons does it have? How many neutrons does it have? So what's its A number? Z number? 0. What happens in a scattering reaction? Someone describe what a neutron scatter is. Elastic scatter,
The
specifically.
neutron pretty much bounces off the atom.
Right. This is our billiards ball. So the neutron hits and bounces off. So at the end, we have a neutron and a hydrogen again, right? There's no actual change in a scattering reaction. A little bit of energy left this neutron as it bounced, but not enough to ever create an excited state nucleus. Not enough that we need to emit a gamma or any beta particles, right? You just bounce. Your cue ball hits your 8 ball, you still have a cue ball and an 8 ball. This is the reaction equation.
Wouldn't we have to know the speed of the neutron though? That's not,
Only if we want to know if it has enough energy to cause fission,
oh, okay.
right? That's when we have that roughly 5 to 6 MeV
Yeah,
neutron.
that's what I was curious.
Because this doesn't interact with this nucleus, it bounces off. So it doesn't have to have the energy to overcome the Coulomb force for that proton and electron, right? It doesn't have to be a certain amount of energy to have an elastic scatter.
So that's it?
That was it.
Oh.
These 3 questions really were supposed to get you reviewing chemistry and how we write a reaction. So when I start writing this and we're talking about fission and we're producing our different fission fragments, you guys know where all these numbers are supposed to go and how we balance both sides of the reaction. So my hope was that this was some review from chemistry. Those of you who also went ahead and calculated mass defect for this, because that's what we were doing on the first 7, it's fine. You would have gotten an impossibly small number that's like basically 0. That's why we don't fission with hydrogen. right? This is the epitome of the small, lightweight nuclides, right? It's the smallest one. That's why we go way up to something that's got like over 200 up here instead of 1.
That's just because it's the one source of there's no energy.
And because it releases a significant amount of energy when we have enough energy in our neutrons to overcome the Coulomb force. Coulomb force is going to be larger in our heavier nuclides because there's more things it has to hold together. So when we get enough energy to actually break it apart, we'll get some real energy out.
I remember Michael's explaining it to us because protons are attracted to electrons, right? And there's more neutrons in there, so they're more spread out. So that's why I thought it was pretty easy.
So there is an aspect of that, right? So we talked about cross-section in materials a little bit, and how that's our cross-sectional area for interaction with our neutrons. The bigger nuclide, the more area there is that your neutron can hit, right? That is definitely a factor. But right now, we're just talking about the energy principles. There's no energy that comes from breaking this one proton away from its one electron. You're almost going to get 0. And if you don't carry your digits out far enough, if you're doing the math, your answer will be 0. Right? Okay. So with that explanation, what does number 8 say? Or sorry, number 9, the next one.
Oxygen 16 absorbed the neutron, and a gamma and scattered neutron are emitted.
So we have a neutron and an oxygen. What's our A number here?
1.
What's the Z number?
0.
What's the A number?
16.
What's the Z number?
8.
And then I tell you that it what?
A gamma and a scattered neutron are emitted.
A gamma, a neutron, and then the target nucleus, right? So what kind of reaction from the DOE handbook reading is that?
Inelastic.
And why do you say that?
Because a gamma and a neutron are emitted.
Yes. So here, elastic scattering is just our billiards balls. They bounce off of each other. Inelastic scattering, this neutron is going to interact with the target nucleus, and a different neutron might be scattered. And because for that moment it came into the nucleus, we have energy that goes from the neutron into the target nucleus that has to come back out in the form of a gamma. And we know that that's the case because that is the definition of what occurs with an inelastic scatter. Any questions on this one? Okay. Does everyone see in the DOE handbook reading where that example of an inelastic scattering reaction is? They have the equation written out that shows a gamma coming out. Okay.
I see the picture of the inelastic scattering, but I do not see an equation in there.
So they just have the picture ready.
Yep. Okay, and that's the same thing for the neutron one. And then that's where I was confused because they're showing this equation, but then they don't give you anything more.
Okay.
So,
And we're not going to calculate net energy conservation momentum in this class. But yeah, this, I was consider that, go back to the figure. This figure 16 16 for elastic scattering and figure 17, right? It's just putting this equation, we just wrote out this reaction equation in a pictographic form, right? We have our 1, 0 neutron, our 1, 1 hydrogen for elastic, for our 16 oxygen for inelastic. Here, we just get the same thing, but then for the inelastic scattering, we get a gamma added to that. So, does that set you up with what to do for number 10?
So me and Jen kind of had a disagreement, because on number 10, if it would be the boron plus the neutron, but only emits gamma, I put that it would be excited, but then go to releasing a beta and a gamma. And she also has a neutron being emitted from her.
So boron can undergo many different types of reactions. And this one was purposely a little bit sneaky because in the DOE handbook, a different type of reaction uses boron 10 as its example. What type of reaction absorbs a neutron and emits a gamma, regardless of what the target neutron is? Radiative capture. And so it's going to be neutron plus some target nucleus goes to our target nucleus and emitting a gamma, right? We didn't release a neutron in what I stated. So we have an isotope of our target nucleus and a gamma that's emitted. This is one of the ways we make radioactive unstable isotopes, right? Our neutron creates an isotope with the target nucleus that has now an amount of energy that makes it unstable. And so it's going to release radioactive gamma to get rid of that extra energy that came from the neutron. And that's why our neutron activation in the core can create radioactive water, steel, zirconium.
I way overthought that whole thing. I'll be back and do that.
Well, and if you already did the mass defect calculations with that, I'm pretty sure that's exactly what you said you did, Jack. Like I said, I'll give extra credit for those who did those steps. There's nothing wrong with taking those steps. I just wanted us to look at the chemical equations here.
So do both.
If you have time and want to.
I don't know.
Yeah, Katie.
When you use boron as poison, does it emit gammas? When it's being like, that radiative capture?
Yes, control rods are very radioactive.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Not when you put them in, right? The boron by itself isn't.
When you take it out.
When you take it out, it's been neutron activated, and it's going to be a strong gamma
So
emitter.
how is that handled when it's taken out?
It luckily decays fairly quickly. So by the time your decay heat has decayed away enough that you can open up the core and like start your refueling, usually your radioactivity is decayed away as well.
Great.
Does that answer your question, Bailey?
Yes, thank you. I was also overthinking it.
So what is this step on that?
So
Look what I can do.
Because it's got, is the star, does that mean that's the excited part of it?
yes,
Okay.
right? So we're
And they're insulated, look, don't.
right? So it absorbs that neutron.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's energy in the
No,
center
they're
coming in.
campus, but they're
Here's
stretchy.
energy.
I
and
never
this
got
is
that. It's
excited.
$18.
And when we emit a gamma, here's where that is.
Okay. So it's okay to write it like this for the boron 10, or do you want it on this part?
This, I'm trying not to.
Great.
Yes. Watching on it. Okay, well. I was trying not to put the exact answer right on the board.
Dude, my ass hasn't been skating since like 08.
So that's exactly what I had written down.
Thanks, Mackenzie. I'll see you next week.
You're welcome, Jack. See you later.
Because me and Jen started